Welcome to Close Watch, now a proud member of the Odd Pods Media Network. This is the show where we get to know our guests through the movies they love. I'm your host, Robert Yaniz Jr., and this is episode 24. As always, you can find more episodes of this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and other podcatchers, as well as crookedtable.com. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated. Today, we are talking another movie musical, this time 1965's The Sound of Music, and I am honored to welcome to the show film critic Phoenix Clouden. How are you doing, sir?
What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I know we've been kind of going back and forth about having you on one of these episodes to do a movie musical. So I'm glad we were finally able to make it happen.
Yes, and we picked a good one. So thank you so much for that.
We did. I want to open this up because I know we're gonna get obviously into the Sound of Music itself, but I think one reason that I thought this was an interesting one to have you on for is because I saw your Letterboxd review. I troll Letterboxd for potential guests for people listening to this and wanting to maybe get on here, and I love the counterpoints that you make between The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins. So I
Yes.
guess just to let everything out there, this was my first time watching The Sound of Music, and I've
Oh,
seen the Mary Poppins a million times. I
right.
feel like I'm developing a theory that people grow up with one or the other, but not necessarily both
Mm,
mutually coexisting. So I guess before we get to The Sound of Music, let's briefly touch on the other mid 60s Julie Andrews led musical in which her character enters a family's home specifically to take care of the children.
right. It blew my mind that these are very similar movies, both
Yeah.
musicals, both starring Julie Andrews, and very similar characters, and literally came out within a year of each other. I
Yeah.
believe. I think one 64, the other one 65. Like it's crazy.
Absolutely.
Um, I guess people were blown away by Mary Poppins, so she got a lot of recognition for that, and it blows my mind because this is a much better film, movie, everything. Um, I hated Mary Poppins. Hated it with a burning passion. I could not stand that movie.
So then
Um,
if the movies are so similar, what do you hate about Mary Poppins? Which I obviously is sort of an unpopular opinion, but hey, I'm interested to hear your take on it.
yeah, so the thing that I hated about it is so I adore musicals.
Yeah.
Very big fan of musicals. But because of that, I have a type.
Okay. Yeah,
and
yeah, fair.
like so Sound of Music is very much my type of musical. It's very
Mhm.
much my type. Mary Poppins is very much not. It's I think it's too dance heavy, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
the songs themselves, just the way that they're structured, the lyrics to them
Yeah.
bore me to tears. Like they're really like just not my cup of tea. Outside of what's the super long title one? I forget. Um yeah,
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
that one. That one's fine. That's a hit. But like everything else, I was so turned off by. And the story itself really annoyed me. And more importantly, far more importantly, Mary Poppins is an asshole. Like she is a straight up asshole. Like she's not like an asshole to the kids. She's an asshole to the guy who likes her. She's just an
She's like
asshole, bro.
she's like, "My whole plan, I'm gonna make these kids love their father by treating them even worse in some
Right. Yeah. I'm like, she's a dick, bro. Like, so I'm like, it was very hard to like get into her character because I was like, like so much I had heard about this movie is that she's such a wholesome character, that
Mhm.
she's, what I'm saying, like that she brings the joy and fun back into these people's lives. And I was like, where's that movie at? Because this chick is trash. Like, so yeah, I was like, not a fan. I was not a fan of her as a person. I really didn't like the fact, and I saw a movie that I saw before actually seeing Mary Poppins was the movie with Tom Hanks and Emma Thompson.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Saving Mr. Banks.
Yeah, Saving Mr. Banks.
Yeah.
And, Emma Thompson was playing the role of, the woman who wrote Mary Poppins,
Right.
and apparently she was very adamant against it being a Disney movie. She hated Walt Disney, she hated his movies, and so, like, a lot of the ideas that, would typically go into a Disney movie, she was just very much against, and she fought him all the way, for everything, and eventually, they turned in the movie that was somewhat what Walt wanted and somewhat what she wanted, right?
Mhm.
And seeing that first and then seeing Mary Poppins, I'm like, I'd have told that lady to sit down and shut the hell up. Like, I'm dead ass because I'm like, your ideas suck. If your ideas is the reason why this movie turned out the way it did, you need to sit down and hush up because this is not it. It is so convoluted. It is messy. It's not entertaining. It's just
Yeah.
it's so utterly unwatchable in my opinion. It's very
Uh-huh.
unwatchable. The character is unlikable. The songs are not very memorable. And the story, the plot itself, it just is it's not interesting. It seems very much like she wanted to have a story that was very serious
Mhm.
and Walt really wanted to make it, a Disney movie. And I think those two ideas clashing against each other just made the movie out of whack. And I don't know, people loved it. People still love it. I don't
Yeah.
get it. It's not for me. But yeah, I was very much not a
Yeah.
fan.
No, I mean, I mean, I love Mary Poppins, obviously, because I grew up with it. It's like a nostalgic thing too. So, but, like, if you're saying your interest in musicals is, like, less of, like, 10-minute dance sequences,
Yeah.
episodic, like, scenes with characters that are not in the rest of the movie. Like, there's the whole they jump into the oil painting, and then
Yeah.
they're, like, just hanging out with animated, animals and dancing
Yeah.
with penguins, and then they floating on the ceiling with her Uncle Albert. Like, I get it. Like, weirdly, this movie is, like, I'm gonna say probably at least an hour longer, and feels more focused than Mary
Yeah.
Poppins, which is kind of all over the place.
Hmm.
Yeah, so and that's part of what it's going for, so it either works for you or it doesn't, but yeah, I get it. I feel you. And it's also too this movie, I think, became such a The Sound of Music became such a phenomenon, became, it for a few years there, the highest grossing movie of all time, I think, like, briefly
Mm,
surpassed Gone with the Wind. Uh,
nice.
Won Best Picture, Director, but lost Actress, probably 'cause Julie Andrews
She
had just won for Mary
had
Poppins.
just won, yeah.
So, it kind of Mary Poppins stole its thunder, I think, in, like, the awards department,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a bummer because I do think a lot of what you had heard about Mary Poppins actually applies to Maria.
Yeah.
Probably a lot more cleanly, whereas
Yeah.
Mary Poppins is like, "Oh, like, she's got a plan, but there's gonna come off times where, you're giving her the side eye, like, what's going on with this nanny?"
Ugh.
Yeah,
There's a scene I wish I could remember the chimney sweeper's name. I know he's played by Gene Kelly.
her yeah,
But, like, I guess he does something that's pretty impressive, and, like, Mary
yeah.
Poppins just stands there, like, fake clapping. I was like, "You rude like like, so again, like, yeah, just all like, everything that I heard about Mary Poppins really just applies to Maria. Maria is a literal ball of sunshine. Like, and yeah, so, like, I loved everything about this character way, way more than I did Mary Poppins.
Did you grow up with a lot of musicals in general? I mean, other than Mary Poppins, obviously?
I mean, the musicals that I typically grew up with were the Disney musicals, so, like,
Mhm, yeah.
Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Mulan. Those were the musicals that I really, gravitated towards.
Yeah.
Wasn't until I was older that I learned about the more heavier musicals, but yeah.
Right, right, right. It's kinda funny too because this one starts out way more lighthearted and then,
Yeah.
like, takes a turn in the last maybe 45 minutes or so,
Yeah.
which is funny because the last episode we covered Fiddler on the Roof, which similarly starts off
Right, right.
uproar, like joyous and about, sort of a slice of life kind of atmosphere, and then takes a dark turn with like a an oppressive government and regime coming in and putting our characters through the ringer. Is that something about this movie that took you by surprise the first time you saw it, or were you like, what did you know about The Sound of Music when you sat
Yeah.
down to watch it for the first time?
So, like, the first time I saw this was actually during the pandemic. So,
Oh wow,
like,
okay.
yeah, so the pandemic really gave me a lot of opportunity to watch movies I'd never seen before because there
Hmm.
was nothing else to do. So, like, yeah, it was a massive shock because I was like, this is another musical I'd heard great things about. I knew the song "Climb Every Mountain" from another movie I had seen.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that it was a part of this. So like
right.
I was like, "Oh, okay." So like when that scene came up, I was like, "Oh, cool. That's something I had never heard of." I had also knew the song uh My Favorite Things, obviously. I actually thought that was a part of Mary Poppins. So it was shocking to find out like, "Oh no, it's actually a part of this."
Right.
Would have fit in Mary Poppins actually. Probably would have been better, but
Could have swapped it out with like a spoonful of sugar or something
yeah,
in that
absolutely.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the music really, I just was like, I think the first song, she comes on and you hear that note, the hills are alive, and you're like, okay,
Well,
like,
I'm gonna be Mary Poppins at the slow clap right now. Well
and
done,
yeah,
Phoenix.
like I'm immediately hooked in. Once the song ends, we get a glimpse of Maria as a character. She's sort of this um aloof kind of goofy, free spirited kind of girl. And, the nuns are like, she's getting on my nerves. And they send her away. And she gets another great song where she's like, I have confidence in me. And you're like, oh man, like again, just
Oh,
that super bubbly personality, very upbeat. And, you know, again, when she's there with the kids, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is Mary Poppins all over again," you know what I'm
right.
saying? But I was like, I literally a part of me was like, "Is she gonna pull out like, is she gonna have a bag of like, magical things that,
Right.
she has?" Like, did they literally do the same movie over?
And she's
Um,
walking with like a big carpet bag in this movie
right.
too, when she arrives. And you're like, uh-oh. All
So
very familiar.
and as it goes, what I'm saying, we get all the different characters, we learn about the kids, what their motivations are, and I'm like, this is a very sweet movie. And
Mhm.
it isn't until it hits the intermission that I'm like, damn, this movie's long. Like and but when it switches to, the more serious aspects of it,
Mhm.
like I was completely thrown off guard for that because I was like, oh, like okay, like for as
Yeah.
lighthearted as it is in the beginning, you know what I'm saying, to get to that place, you're like, oh wow. Like all I'd ever heard about this was that, is she comes in, she helps with the kids, she falls in love with the captain, and there's a baroness who he's supposed to marry, but she ends up, usurping her. And I thought that was the end. Like I thought that was the whole struggle was the baroness is evil to the kids and she swoops in and saves the day and then she marries into the family and that's la la la
Right.
everybody's happy.
And then
So
you're
to
like,
find
"Oh,
out there's
there's 45 minutes of this thing," or
this
whatever.
right, to find out there's a whole nother section after that, I was like, oh wow. And it not only does it shift the tone of the whole movie, but surprisingly it still fits. That's
Mhm.
what really kind of really made me really appreciate this a lot is, like we said earlier about Mary Poppins, it kind of jumps all over the place and, doesn't
Yeah.
really have any, a focus or anything. So for this movie to start in such a light place and end in such a vastly different one, it was crazy how well that it still all worked together to tell like an amazing story. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was floored by that.
Well, because director Robert Wise and his team, like they do a really good job, I think, threading that needle throughout. Where like there's offhanded remarks about, oh, he has the Austrian flag up during the party, and like so you
Right.
know, like, there's a spectra hanging over everything. You just don't expect it to, like, invade the middle of the movie. It's like we watched the Gremlins movies recently with our daughter, our 8-year-old daughter,
Mhm.
and it's like the middle of that movie where the Gremlins just, like, take over. It's just like, all of a sudden,
Whoa.
it's we're in a Nazi movie now, like, and, you know, I think it's handled really well, and I think it elevates the themes, 'cause at its core, I think this movie is, and we'll talk about it more when we get into the songs. This is like this is a story about hope. This is about resilience, kind of perseverance in the face of a changing world,
Mhm.
and also family. And I think like seeing all of those kind of coalesce with, you know, the spoilers for a what 50 something year old movie,
Right, right.
70-year-old movie, the old ass movie.
Yeah.
Um, spoilers for this movie. The Von Trapp family escaping
Right.
Austria and literally climbing over the mountains,
Yeah.
climbing over the hills that are alive with the sounds of music. Like I thought it was a really beautiful way to sort of bring it all home.
Right.
And you know, like I said, this was the first time I had watched this, so weirdly, I have, you know, I have pop culture obviously to thank for like my favorite things, but then weirdly Seth MacFarlane because he really loves musicals. So Family
Yeah.
Guy, I was a big fan of, like in the early mid 2000s. So
Mhm.
like there were references to all of these songs. He has a cover of Something Good on his first album of like
Oh, yeah.
standards. And I was watching this, I was like, I know this song. Where do I
That
ChatGPT, where do I know this song from? And I was like not hitting me. And then finally
yeah.
earlier this evening, I was like, wait a minute, he sang it on an album. That's why this guy like primed me for Sound of Music. So I had no idea that that iconic shot of her on the hills running and singing,
Mhm.
that was the first moment of the movie.
Yeah.
So that took me back. I was like, "Oh wow, we're doing that already."
We're doing that
Um,
immediately.
yeah, we didn't build to that crescendo. You know, I think in a lot of ways, you know, we're all sort of all I'm covering all these classic musicals. In a lot of ways, it's all sort of in line with like the Wicked phenomenon that's happened. That movie has a sort of pretty obvious homage to Elphaba, like on a hilltop, kind of singing out into the horizon, but it
Right.
builds to it. And so this one starts
Right.
there. It was really surprising to me. But yeah, it's plus you have Julie Andrews, just one of the best to ever do it. Like
Man.
you could put her
I
in
mean,
anything, and I'm like, worth the price of
and
admission.
that's another thing too. Like, one of my favorite movies growing up was Princess Diaries, and that was
Yeah,
the first my first introduction to Julie Andrews was that.
totally.
And like, so like to find out like, oh, like, oh, thi like I met Julie Andrews after, where she's like, "Oh yeah, it's Julie Andrews." Now I know why, like her name,
Mhm.
like now you know the real Julie Andrews. It was
Yep.
sort of the same thing with Debbie Ryan. I had known her in Halloween Town. That was my introduction, and then I
Right.
finally saw Singing in the Rain. I was like, oh, that's the real, yeah, okay,
That's where we're coming from. Yeah, yeah,
right.
exactly.
So yeah, but like same with you. Like I discovered a lot of these songs through osmosis. So like when I was finally like watching, I was like, oh, that's where this comes from. It's like, oh yeah. So like a lot of these are like songs that I've heard throughout my whole life, and now I know where they come from, their original context. So that was another thing that just made me even more appreciate this movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it feels like there's so many ways this could have gone wrong, like not only the tonal shift that you mentioned, but
Right.
also it's hard enough to get a one single decent child actor. Here you have 7, essentially. I
Seven?
mean,
Yeah.
Liesel, the actress playing Liesel is, I think I checked, like, was, like, 23 when this movie came out, so she's playing younger, but, like,
Right.
6 and a half child actors, and all of them are charming, and all of them feel well-defined enough that it's not just, like like a gobbledygook of random kids, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Uh, and they're charming, and they have chemistry, and then Christopher Plummer, to your point with Julie Andrews, Christopher Plummer is an actor I've only seen, like, in his later years, and so
Right.
now going
Right.
back and seeing him in this, he's not doing his own singing, we should probably point that out, but,
Yeah. That's
he
fair.
is dubbed over, as was the way, but I was even like, "There's no way." While I was watching it, I was like, "I don't think Christopher Plummer is doing this." Sorry, Chris. Alright. Christopher Plummer, you were a great actor. Well, you're missed, but you couldn't sing like you can keep your hold your own with Julie Andrews. Let's not go crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a tough task for anybody, but yeah.
but they had really good chemistry.
Oh,
The
amazing
balance
chemistry.
of the because it's when you have a babysitter, essentially a governess, nanny, whatever situation that then develops into a love story with the parent, that could be tricky if it's not handled correctly. And I think this
Mhm.
movie does a really good job of sort of towing that line between where they both recognize their feelings, but it's like sweet, it's chaste, it's especially because her coming from the abbey, from the convent with the
Right,
nuns, and then it's
right.
like that bringing that perspective. So I think this movie has interesting things to say about Maria and her point of view when she's confronted with like the seeds of a potential romance.
Yeah, and they handle it all very well, like, because you have, the captain is already engaged to someone else, and that was another thing. I was expecting the Baroness to be evil. She's not.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
no,
she's actually relatively sweet. Like, I like the comparison that I often think of to this movie is I think it's, yeah, The Parent Trap.
mhm,
And, like, the girls are trying to get their parents back together, and the dad is about to marry this, high end, female, and she's only after his money, and
right,
that's sort of how I view the Baroness, is that it's like, oh, okay, she's looking to, get into this very wealthy life, but you actually sit through the movie, like, she very much loves the captain. She liked the children. She, like, what I'm saying, she didn't have an issue. I thought she
yeah,
would be overbearing, or that she would be, crass, or even like when she
mhm,
was playing like very sweet, I thought she would, that was just an act. And, eventually once they got married, she turned out to be the evil stepmother or whatever, what I'm saying? Like something like
yeah, yeah.
that. So that was another surprise, is that, like, what I thought was going to be a usual trope was not. It was actually very sincere. So that again threw me for a loop, because I think now if you see that story, like, it does go that route. So, like,
Mhm.
to get an actual, like, nice, story like that, I was like, I think that's why I love it so much. Is like, everyone's nice except for,
The
Hitler.
Nazis.
But yeah, yeah, but except for the Nazis,
I love
everyone's
when
nice.
well, yeah, I love that all the characters minus the Nazis are three-dimensional, well-developed. They feel and it makes them
Right,
feel real, and it makes you, the audience member, be like, "Well, should he be with Maria?" I mean, I wanna be with
right.
Maria because she's Julie Andrews, but also, like, the Baroness is like there's clearly a connection that the Baroness and the captain have. She like you said, she doesn't love the kids like Maria does, but, like,
Mhm.
so it's a fit, it's just not the best fit, I think,
It's
that
not
the
the
captain has.
fit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, even characters like, Uncle Max in this thing, I
Mhm.
thought he's, like, clearly like, "Oh, we're gonna get the kids to perform, and, it'll help out your family." Maybe me too, but, that's beside the point. He I think, is is also one of those characters that could have crossed that line to be,
Mhm.
like, super exploitive of these kids, of this family, and he never
Mhm.
really gets there. He's, kind of quietly resisting, like, he's just making ni his the other thing that I think is interesting is that they have different approaches with dealing with the Nazi regime that's sort of,
Oh, yeah.
washing over Austria. So the captain, I again another thing I didn't realize that GIF which I've seen with him ripping the Nazi flag, I didn't realize
Right.
that was from this movie. I was like, oh, that
Right.
makes sense now. It's a great GIF, very relevant to our times. And and then Uncle Max is just he's just like, Heil Hitler, just kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, whatever. Like I'll do what I have to, but I feel gross about it. I thought that
yeah.
was an interesting, very salient political kind of social commentary point that the movie's making. Like, well,
Mhm.
what is the right way? Do you just like sit down and keep your head down and go along with it as much as you have to, or are you like, nope, outspoken, not doing it. There's my Austrian flag.
Mhm.
I'm not going to. He even says like they're gonna basically kill us, or I have to
Right,
go to the Navy, which is unthinkable, he says,
right.
and start killing people for the Nazis. So
Yeah.
I like. What are your thoughts on that side of it, and how this movie sort of presents different approaches to dealing with the political adversary?
Yeah, again, just another aspect that floored me because I was like, that's really your two choices. You can go along to get along or you can resist. And, you know, again, I was so thrown by this movie because, you know, if you have perceptions of certain people or you're just used to seeing certain tropes, especially in movies, you get an idea of in your mind of who these characters are probably going to be,
Right,
right? Before we meet the captain, I'm thinking he's going to be pompous, he's going to be arrogant, he's going to be, a jackass who Maria changes, you know what I'm saying? Who
right.
just by the light of her, she changes him. And that's not the case. Like he's a reasonable, sensible man who like has a standard, and he sees the Nazi invasion and he's like he sees it for what it is and he's like, "No." Like
Mhm,
like I will not stand for that. You know what I'm saying? This is my country, this is what we stand for. And oftentimes what you get in those situations, which is also another parallel to our times, is you'll get those people who are on opposite sides. You'll get those people who are like, we will resist until even if we're the only ones left, we will
mhm.
resist until we can't and we have to leave. And then you'll get the others who will just play nice to be nice and capitulate and you know suffer silently. And I think you had a lot of those people during that time who just did that,
Absolutely.
who just suffered silently even though they knew that it was wrong, but resisting would be way too dangerous. So there's a,
Mhm.
there's a lot of that. And again, for a musical with this, you know, with this kind of music, like there's not a song in here where you feel like the dread and the doom of what is
Right.
actually happening. Uh, all of this music, even till the end, is very hopeful, very joyful. So it's like, man, we're doing something great here. When we can tell a story about the Nazis and be like, yeah, but we're still gonna sing about our favorite things.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like I think that's just brilliant. It's brilliantly done.
Yeah, the other person that we have to bring into the mix regarding this too is Rolf, because we get the not
Right.
the Muppet, not the epic Muppet, who we love him, the other Rolf, the Rolf from Sound of Music.
Right.
We get the person that's radicalized and sort of seduced by the
Mhm.
Nazis. We get the quiet, like, all right, fine, I guess I'll Hitler. And then we get the outspoken, like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm taking my family. I'm getting the hell out of here.
Right.
And I love that we get those three perspectives. And I wrote down what the captain says to Ralph that finally makes him snap, because you get that really tense moment where they're about to escape and Ralph finds them and he's like, get to the car, I'll kind of buy us some time essentially. And he's like, come with us. He's not too late, blah, 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 blah. And then Ralph is sort of hesitating and he says, you'll never be one of them. And that's where he snaps. It's like,
Mm.
Lieutenant, Lieutenant, they're over here. I thought
Mhm.
that was really like for a movie like this, where it opened up with Julie Andrews like joyously singing on the
Right.
hilltop.
Right.
I was like not 100% convinced the captain was gonna make it out of this movie.
Oh yeah.
Like
I was
it's
terrified
it's
of
it's
that.
so yeah, and I admire stories that are able to shift back and forth between that, because that's life, right? The
Yeah.
moments of happiness, there's always there's darkness outside it. It's
Mhm.
ever present. You have to find a way to cope with it. And I love that. I think it's Gretel. Is they're hiding, and she's like, "Oh, should we sing about our favorite things?" And
It's like,
Maria's like, "No, no, no,
not
not
right
this is
now.
the one time. Let's not do that, please."
I love it. I love it because it's such a sweet moment. It's after they've been married and like they don't refer to her as Marie anymore. I think they call her mom. So it's
Yeah,
like it's very sweet. And Gretel's one of the young ones who's like, "Should we do it?" And she's like, like, very lovingly. Not right now, sweetheart. Maybe later. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just love that. I thought it was so beautiful, so sweet, so human. Just a great human moment. I love that moment where with Rolf when he tells him, like, yeah, you'll never be one of them. And I love that it triggers him and that
Mhm.
it sends him on a spiral because how often do we see people who are not of the ilk that wants a certain thing a certain way, and there
Yeah.
are people who join up with them who are not of that, what I'm saying, and they're like, homie, you realize that you they'll turn on you just as quickly as they turn
Oh,
on
yeah.
us, like,
Oh, yeah.
just as quickly, and like, but those people never want to listen, and they get swept up in it, and it's the leopards eating my face. You know what I'm saying? I never thought the leopards would eat my face, but they're leopards, so yeah, they will.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Is that why you think this movie has endured in the way that it has? Is that it's able to hit on such a sort of profound universal theme, but, like, sandwiched in this big Hollywood musical with Julie Andrews front and center?
Yeah, man. I mean, I was today years old when I found out that this was actually a true story. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, you know, fancy filled,
Right.
over dramatized, but uh, the Maria von Trapp is a real woman. She wrote this book and about her life, and I mean, talk about just scoring, like scoring the ultimate deal. You wrote a book about your life. You thought like, oh yeah, this is a very interesting story. People should hear about it, and all of a sudden, it's endured for 60 some odd plus years
Mhm.
as a musical, as a movie, as a story. I'm sure she's never had to write another story a day in her life afterwards. Like, that's the deal I want, man. I need some of that. That's crazy. But yeah, it's a such an amazing, amazing story of resilience, of of also not knowing who you are and then finding it. You know what I'm saying? So there's
Mhm.
so many lessons I think in this movie that are, that so many people can take away from, whether you feel like Maria, whether you feel like, Captain Von Trapp, whether you're the rejected woman who the Baroness is, whether you're the oldest, I forget her name.
Liesel.
Liesel, who like has to deal with the fact that a person that she loved turned out to be not who she thought he was. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
there's so many lessons in this that I think are universal and that people can find a lot of relatability with, and it's such a beautiful story. I know that's a weird way to
No,
talk
no, it
about
is.
it, but like I love how it ends because the fear of losing, obviously, again, you think like with the tropes that we know of, you think someone's not making it out of this, because
Mhm.
it's such a dangerous situation, but that they all survive, and that that final shot of them going over the mountain and finding whatever it may be, peace, sanctuary, whatever it is, and escaping this sort of horrible situation, um, is just as it's just as powerful as if they stayed and fought, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like we're all together, we survived it, we get to move on, and we get to resist from afar. We still
Yeah.
resisting, but we just have to do it from afar. I just think it's a beautiful message, and I think again, there's so much universality to it that anybody can take away from
And not only are they all together, but, like, they just sort of became like, they returned from their honeymoon to deal with
it.
this.
Right.
They're like, "We just found each other." It's not like, "Oh, we married a long time. What do we do for the
Right.
sake of the children?" It's like, "No, we just became a family." These kids are still getting used to calling her mother. Yeah, it is. No, it is. I think it is a really beautiful story, and I think it's a testament to the power of that story that I'd say this is one of those musicals that hasn't really been like Hollywood hasn't like tried to get every little last drop out of it. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
haven't really gotten a there was a live TV version like I think
Mhm.
a few years ago with like Carrie Underwood,
Mhm.
that there hasn't been like a sequel or like a
Oh, thank
remake
God.
or
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? But same thing
Yeah.
with Fiddler on the Roof, which we talked about last episode. But like they've been very smart of like, no, this thing doesn't need it. Like no
It
notes.
doesn't. Yeah,
like
it's really a 10 out of 10 no notes. Like, it really is. Robert Wise, I mean, talk about just knocking it completely out of the park. Like, this is phenomenal. Like, really, really a sensational film. I think, during that time, especially during the pandemic, I watched a lot of classic films. You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
got caught up on a lot of classic films. And nothing floored me like this. Like, this one genuinely floored me because it was like, wow. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
this came out in 1965. It was 2020 when I watched it, and I was like, I'm floored. Like, I'm genuinely floored. And not just, story perspective, but even technical wise, like, this thing looks beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
it really looks sensational. And it's like, the sound design is incredible. The costuming is amazing. Like, the set pieces are phenomenal. So it's like, it's amazing to me. And I mean, obviously this won Best Picture, but like,
Yeah.
deservingly so. Like, it is a well produced film, like a very well produced film on
Yeah.
every aspect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We should probably also point out Robert Wise, also the filmmaker behind West Side Story, which also I
Nice,
believe won Best Picture and definitely won Best Director for him as
he
well.
did,
So yeah, man knows what he's doing.
and knows his stuff.
As
And
a
shout
fellow
out to
Robert,
Rodgers
I
and
appreciate it.
Hammerstein for
I was
this.
just about
Yeah.
I was just about to segue into that. So obviously, The Sound of Music, 3-hour movie has wall-to-wall music. Obviously, there's some this is a good question to sort of throw off here because these movie musicals that are 3 hours, they usually a lot of times have long non-musical sections in them. Do you prefer a musical that's just, like, sung from beginning to end, or do you like to have little breaks in between? Because I feel like people have their own perspectives on that.
I am a massive proponent of a musical having both book and lyrics.
Mm.
Like, so
Yeah,
like, there's a story that you tell through dialogue, and there's a story that you tell through music.
right.
And I think that to me is the best approach because, they say the best part about music is the words that you can't say, that you
Yeah.
just feel, right? So like, everything you say can't be a feeling, right? Right?
Right.
You know what I'm
No,
saying? Like,
absolutely.
you gotta, I think, to me, that's the most realistic way of looking at a musical. Like, if we actually in real life, got to a point where we had to sing our feelings,
Mhm.
that's how it would go. That's exactly how it would go. You would talk, and then you would reach that moment where you're like, I need to put this in a different way just
Right.
so it reaches you. And I think so, to me, yeah, that's the best way of doing it. Straight sung through kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
when the music overpowers the story, I think that's where you run into an issue where, like, you drown people out, and it's not a fun experience.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think of Les Mis, that kind of does that.
Mhm.
The most recent Joker movie kind of did that. So like, a lot of people were turned off by that.
Yeah.
The new Mean Girls also, I think, did that. So yeah, it's like, it's just a way of being like, you got to have balance. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Everything needs balance, and story and music to working together, especially when the music is good, like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
makes for a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. It you need to the if you put those exclamation points every other word,
Right.
essentially, it does you're like, "Okay, I get it." Like, it's not the same suspension of disbelief. I've been kind of obviously because of this podcast, I've been in like a classic musical sort of revisiting and kind of expanding my side of that as well. I also should point out, like, I recently watched season 2 of Schmigadoon on Apple TV Plus. If people haven't seen that, so good. First season of which deals a lot with like the musicals of the 40s and 50s, including Sound of Music.
Right.
But this film obviously has so many iconic songs. that Seth MacFarlane has included in Family Guy at one point or another. Um, but let's talk about six of them.
Let's talk
Mm.
about six, baby. Let's talk about flicks and me. Let's talk about what the good films and the bad films are to me. Let's talk about six. Let's talk about six.
I love the reaction, Phoenix. I'm to,
You
I'm to,
recorded that, didn't you?
I did. I've used it intermittently over the in the past. I've
Oh
now figured
man.
out. I've now started in Zencaster, implanting it into the dashboard so that it can play for us and the listener to hear.
Oh,
But yeah. So without further ado, Phoenix, what do you have at number six?
so number six was tough because there's so many great ones, and uh, I wanted to cheat, but I didn't. So for me, number six, just barely edging out the title song is "Climb Every Mountain."
Nice.
Yeah, love it. Again, it's a song that I have a little bit of history with. And yeah, I just think it's a very well sung song, very well written song.
Yeah.
And I love a song that works in a musical and outside of it. Like it's one of those things where it's like even if you didn't know the sound of music, but you heard "Climb Every Mountain," it's a song that could work just as a song. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Oh yeah.
Like that's number one reason why I love
Yeah, I actually also had "Climb Every Mountain" at number 6.
it.
So it's a song performed by Peggy Wood as the Reverend Mother
Mhm.
when Maria goes and tells her, that she might have feelings for the captain and maybe he has the same back and what should she do? Should she run away from it? And the Reverend Mother is like, you need to go back, you need to face it, climb every mountain, like, every don't like just shut yourself off at the first challenge. She's like,
Right,
you keep going, you keep put. That's what I meant when I was talking earlier about like perseverance, and it's like a major theme in this. Like, oh, the Nazis are coming. Okay, well, you got to find a way to persist. You're not just
right.
gonna, whether that's,
All over.
yeah, you gotta stand your ground. And so I love that. And I wasn't expecting a song performed by that character to hit me emotionally in the way that it does,
Yeah.
because the nuns were they play in early on,
Mhm.
how do you solve a problem like Maria.
Yeah.
And so they're like more like they're like a little bit of a more lighthearted side of the story in a lot of ways. Even later on, we get the joke where the two nuns are like, "Oh, Reverend Mother, I've sinned," and they hold up the car bars
Yeah.
at the very end, which is a brilliant moment. I really would love to see this movie in a theater at some point.
Oh, man. Yeah.
If some theater near me ends up screening this, I would love to see some of these sequences and have the crowd react in real time. But yeah, that was my number six as well. Great song. I'm glad I was able to include it. What do you have at number five?
Number five, I'm going with My Favorite Things. That almost sounds sacrilege, but as much as I love this song. I absolutely love it. It's just too many good ones.
Sure.
But yeah, this is probably the song that I've known the longest. Uh, so I guess because just through osmosis, I'm just so familiar with it. I was like, it's good, but you know what I'm saying? I'd like to know what's around it and in context. Just so many great songs that just stood out more to me, probably because I'm hearing them for the first time. But yeah, My Favorite Things, it's a great song. I love the way it's used in the story and what it means to the kids. I think it's a fantastic song melody. I enjoy it, but fifth for me.
It's also become so ubiquitous that, like you said, like
Oh, ubiquitous.
you're just like, I know this song. I know
You're
Julie
right.
Andrews sings it. I'm assuming it's from something. I don't 100% know what. It's somehow become a Christmas tune for some reason. I don't know how that. I think because she says snowflakes
Yeah.
on
So
snowflakes on whiskers and kittens or whatever she
yeah.
says. So, I don't know how it became a Christmas song. It's not even Christmas in the movie when she sings it. Like I assumed that there was going to be, how every year like Disney or whoever, not Disney,
Mm.
like whoever has the Harry Potter films will be like, oh, 25 days of Christmas,
Oh
Harry
yeah.
Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I'm like, because that one scene where they're like, Happy Christmas, Harry. every Christmas run. I'm like, not a Christmas movie,
It's not a
guys.
Christmas movie.
There's snow at one point, and they acknowledge Christmas has passed. That
Right.
doesn't count. They don't even do that for this song, for that song in this movie. So I don't. Yeah, good call. Number 5, I have Do Re Mi,
Mm.
which I again didn't. I knew it was from this movie,
Hmm.
but also it is like the song that every elementary school chorus class is how they're taught music.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
an entire generation or generations of people are just like, well, no, that's how we teach music to kids.
Yeah.
Just like Maria, do, a deer, a female deer.
Right.
Ray, a drop of golden sun. Like everyone knows that song, to the point that I was watching this the other day for this episode, and my daughter was around, and she's like, "Oh, I've seen this part in school." I'm like, "What?"
That's great.
It's become just part of like
Yeah.
how you teach music.
Yeah.
It's part of how this movie is so iconic. It's permeated just the way we think about movies, about music, about our favorite things. So yeah, I had to include it on there. What do you have at number 4?
At number 4, I have 16 going on 17. I adore this song. It's so funny to me because it's a song that Rolf sings in the beginning of the film, and it's when you're on his side. You know what I'm saying? Like you're
Yeah,
totally on his side. But when I listen to the lyrics, I'm like, he's kind of condescending. Like it's
yeah,
very much like, but it's in that old, spirit of how, we I guess dealt with marriage and male and female relationships at that time,
right.
where the man was pretty much the head and the women followed. So
Yeah,
like a lot of those lyrics are like, oh, you'll follow suit, you'll be a great uh, second piece of me, I'll teach you, like it's very like that. And you're like,
yeah,
on one hand, you're like, it's a catchy song, which is why I like it so much, but it's
mhm.
also a very condescending song where I'm like, it's kind of a dig, but I dig the song too much. And it helps that she sings along with it and makes it even more, what I'm saying, it's supposed to be a very sweet, loving song. It's just, and it is if you don't actually pay attention to the lyrics.
But what I love about this movie too is that a lot of the songs are recontextualized in the context of the movie. So like
Yes.
that song happens there, but then later Maria sort of owns it and sings it to Liesel, and they sing it together because it's like
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, you're 16. You need a man like me to take care of you."
Right.
And then Maria sings it to her like, "Hey, you're only 16 going on 17. You got a lot to learn about
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
You're developing. You're not even a woman really yet. Like, wait a year or two," is the
And
whole
it's
thing.
so
And I
and
love that.
it's so perfect because it's like the way he sings it to her is like, oh, you need someone to show you the ways, right?
Mhm,
And the way Maria sings it to her is like, you have time, right?
mhm.
There's
Yeah,
more to learn. And I think because you have the one that happens at the beginning, it sounds very loving, kind of sweet, even though it is condescending, but it fits the time period. The one later in the film, she's already had some experience. She realizes things are not what they seem to be, and she learns from that. And I think it's just a perfect song that works both ways. It's a great song. I love the hell out of it. But all of these songs are fantastic. So
yeah, exactly. Number 4, I had Something Good, which,
nice.
in the, on the in the Broadway version is a different song. It's, An Ordinary Couple, I believe is the name of
Mm,
that song, and they swapped it out, Rodgers and Hammerstein, for this song, and it's just, I love me a classic love ballad. I, Julie Andrews' vocals is just so perfect here, and then I'm trying to find Bill Lee is the singer that dubs over Christopher Plummer's voice.
right.
It's just they're outside, they're sort of like in a gazebo, they're
Yeah.
holding each other for the first. It's just, the one of those classic movie musical moments where you're just like, "Oh, they don't make them like this anymore," kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And,
You are
and so I had to put that in there. It's like this is a beautiful song, and these two people finding each other to our both of our points earlier. They handle it in a way where it doesn't feel icky, where the
right.
Baroness even when the Baroness is like, "Hey, I saw you the blushing when he was holding you and stuff like that." Like she's not really being a villain because she's right, and so she's
Mhm.
also like, "Hey, I got a situation. What's going on?" And then when he lets her down gently, she understands and steps aside, and it's like you get it builds to this moment, and I think it's in a way one of the climaxes of the movie.
You hit the nail on the head, man. Because this is also my next one.
Oh,
Is
perfect.
is something good. I mean, it is a song that I literally cried when I first heard it. Like when I first saw this, I broke out in tears. It is so beautiful, so incredibly beautiful. Because especially the lyric is like, both of these people feel like they've done something wrong and that they don't deserve something this good. Like, and
Mhm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
how on like that feeling? I know that feeling. And
Mhm.
like to put that in a song, I just thought was majestic. Julie's verse with Bill Lee's voice. I mean, you want to talk about a perfect harmony. Like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And her on-screen chemistry with Christopher Plummer is out of this world. The way that it's shot is lovely. It is so
Mhm.
lovely. That gazebo shot is fantastic. It made me fall in love with gazebos. I was like, I need to find somebody to love and confess it in a gazebo.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, 100%. Oh my god, I love this song. Yeah, so something good is way up there.
Yeah. I think maybe we can blame this movie for why gazebos are like the go-to structure to like exchange vows or
Right,
any
right.
kind of romantic date getaway situation. It's really popularized gazebos as,
Yeah,
"Oh, we gotta have a
it
gazebo."
gave gazebos its name for real. Like, yeah, this
The
is
gazebo business has
yeah.
Sound of Music to thank for it.
Yeah.
So that was your number 3. At my number 3, I did have My Favorite Things.
Nice.
I think I like I knew the song beforehand, obviously. We talked about with how it's every holiday season on the radio for some reason. I love the way in which this is just a beacon of hope to the
Yeah.
children, to the point that Gretel's like, "Hey, let's sing this because this is stressful."
When we're
Um,
hiding and trying to be
yeah,
quiet.
yeah. So it's like the way she comforts them during the
Mhm.
thunderstorm earlier in the movie. It's a song that they sing to themselves to sort of remember what Maria taught them and sort of stand strong. And then how when she re-enters their lives in that moment, joins them in the song. So it's just like for what it represents in the context of, again, the context of the movie, like it changes meaning throughout.
Right.
Um, that's why I ranked it so high because I was even like, I don't want to put it in number one, but it's so famous, but also
Right.
but it works so well in the movie itself. So yeah, that's my favorite things. Is my number 3. What did you have at number 2?
Number 2 is probably like I struggled with putting this at number 1. Like this and my number 1 are neck and neck. But my number 2 is Edelweiss. I
Nice.
love this song. I love this song. I love how it's presented in the movie. I just love that. Because that's you talk about the nun, you were being shocked about the nun having a song,
Yeah.
expecting it, you're not expecting it to affect you as deeply. I was not expecting this song to affect me as deeply as it does. It's the only song where you really get a sense of what Captain Von Trapp is about, what his
Mhm.
who he is as a man, who he is as a captain, who he is as a person. Really understand that he's a man of service, he's a man of dignity, he's a man of pride, he's a man of valor, of success, and
Mhm.
and he cares very deeply for the people that he cares for.
Right.
He's my idol. Like Captain Von Trapp is my idol. Dude, I love this guy. He's so regal and manly. I love a
Yeah.
man who what I'm saying, just respects people.
Yeah.
That's my kind of guy. And that song is like just true passion and true realism from him, and he's just being like, this is what I love. And man, it hits me in the feelings every time.
and it goes from a song of sort of reawakening where they hand him the guitar and he's like, or the I forget exactly what the instrument that he plays, the stringed
Mhm.
instrument, and he is like, "Whoa, I haven't played this in a long time. Like, let me see what I remember." And that's the song that
That's
comes
the
out,
song.
and then it becomes an act of defiance
Yeah.
at the end, where he like
Mhm.
gets the audience to sing, and the Nazis in the front row are like, "This mother." And he's like, "No, Edelweiss," and it's a song that was created for this movie, and I feel like it has sort of been absorbed into the Austrian culture as like, "Oh,
Nice.
oh, that's one of our songs."
Yeah, yeah.
I Edelweiss. I'm like, "Wasn't, but yeah, sure."
It wasn't, but
But it feels
you can
like
adopt it.
it feels like, it feels like a folk song that always existed,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think of, something along the lines of like in Encanto, we were talking about Disney earlier, where Lin-Manuel Miranda did that Dos Oruguitas song for
Oh,
that movie, which is intended to also feel like, oh, this is a folk song that just always existed. And
yeah.
Edelweiss, I think, fits into that same category. And it's yeah, that's a really good call. Uh, Number two, I had So Long Farewell,
Yeah.
be which I have a feeling was your number one.
I love it. It's so good.
It's so good, and it's funny that in a movie with Julie Andrews, that one of the standout songs doesn't even really feature Julie Andrews. It but it's hugely impactful because it's it helps us understand who these kids are, where they're coming from, their dynamic in the family. Liesel says, sings that line about trying her first sip of champagne. Yes?
It's like,
No.
no.
Uh, all of that. And then again, it becomes the song that they sort of like sneak out the
Look
back
out, man.
during the festival too. You sort of realize that as it's happening, like, oh, farewell, and they're like heading out the back door while they're singing it. I thought it's super catchy. Of course, with every one of these episodes that I've been preparing for, I've been watching the film and then listening to the soundtrack to sort of fine tune my ranking. And this is one of
Mm.
those that's really kind of stuck in the back of my head. So long, farewell, Avita, saying goodbye. So all of that, it's a beautiful bit of character development and storytelling. Plus, there's something about a group, a room full of people all singing together in unison. That when they're on the top of the stairs and they're like goodbye, and everyone at the bottom is all the party guests are like, "Goodbye." I was like, "Oh, this is so good." It's the reason
Yeah,
I can't watch a bunch of Muppets singing together without bawling my eyes out. It triggers that same kind of instinct, I think, in me. So,
nice.
yeah. So your number one was So Long Farewell, I assume.
It is not actually, but
Oh wow!
I do
All
I
right,
love that
it's good
song.
stuff.
I think it's so great. My number one actually is gonna be Do Re Mi.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I like so it's funny because I guess, just based on when I finally saw this, that was actually one of the songs I had never heard before. And so like, yeah, I know it's crazy
Yeah.
because it's like
No, that's great.
it's such a, iconic song that's been like, you know, like we own it now. It feels like a song that we use
Yeah.
for everything. But when I first saw it, I had never heard of it. And then, you know, it goes on for a while. I think it's like a 6 minute song or something, and
Yeah.
it's just so. I thought it was so clever. Doe a female deer, Ray a drop of sun,
Yeah.
E a name I call myself, and I was just like, this is so classy and catchy
Mhm.
and like fantastic. Like it's everything supercalifragilisticexpialidocious want it to be that it is not. I love this song and like when after I watched this movie for the first time, I was annoying people with how much I was. I, I was like I was everywhere going like doing all the notes. The
Do re mi fa sol la
do
ti
re mi fa
do.
sol la ti do. Like I was going
I don't know if I
ham.
could do it backwards anymore. I think I
Yeah,
used to because, like,
yeah,
again, elementary school, it's like drilled in you. But now every person, every child and adult knows like this how to sing the scales because of this
yeah.
song.
Because of
Yeah,
this song. And man, I am overly impressed with the creativity. And like you said, having so many people sing the same tune over, and then they overlap on top of each other, which is so
Yeah, love
smooth.
that.
It's just so creative. I like, and it's one of those things where it's like, doing this on stage would literally fry my brain. Like, I was
Mhm.
just trying to remember where you are, T live. I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. But as a song, I just think it's phenomenal, truly phenomenal.
Yeah, no, no. I I would be like the Baroness in that game where they're throwing the ball and she's like, "Oh, no, I'm 5, you're 4. Oh." Where they're passing the ball back and forth and everybody has a number and she's like, "I have
Yeah,
no idea what's going on."
I'm lost.
Boarding school. When's boarding school happening? Oh. My number 1, I have, much to my own surprise, the title track, The Sound of Music.
Nice.
I didn't think that was gonna happen because it is such kind of an obvious choice in a way,
Right, right.
um, and there is that moment up to at the very beginning of the movie, but also I had never seen this movie before, so that all I knew, "The hills are alive and the sound of
Yeah.
music," and that's all I knew. Until, essentially until watching it for this episode. So seeing it not only, we get to know Maria so well from the way she carries herself and presents herself, and then the way she realizes that she's late and like runs back and
Right, right.
grabs her whipple, I guess it's called. And then, um, but also one of my favorite sequences of this movie was the confrontation scene between Maria and the captain, where they come
Mm,
back and they're swimming and, the Baroness is there and he's like, "All right, children, I wanna talk with Fraulein Maria for a second." And they have the and she stands up to him. Like, I was like,
mm.
"Damn,
Yeah.
impressed." I'm like, respect level just went skyrocketed for you, Maria. Um like, I have confidence in me just from,
Right.
you're inspiring me. So the way she challenges him, and then, as we were saying, he has that like very disciplined, gruff kind of, you know, exterior with the whistle, where
Right.
it's established earlier on that she's like, he's gonna whistle for her, and she's like, "You're not, that's not
No.
happening." So, and it's all character based, of course, because he
Right.
lost his wife. So he's like, "Nope, that's not happening again. I'm gonna run this. I'm gonna stay in complete control at all times." Then he hears the
Mhm,
children singing, and they're singing The Sound of Music, and he
mhm.
walks in, and you see him like all those defenses sort of melt away, and then he joins the song, and they stop for a minute because they're like, "What the hell is going on?" Father is singing. I'm not sure how to process this. And then they harmonize in support of him. And it's another
Right.
one where Julie Andrews is like in the wings, just witnessing all this. And it's such a beautiful moment of connection between where
Mhm.
these 7 kids like have their father back for the first
Right.
time. And I don't know if they say, I don't know if they do they establish exactly how long since his wife has passed. I'm not sure if it's been like a year
I
or how long it
I
is.
think they say it, but it's like, I can't remember. It's such a long movie, but I can't
Yeah,
like, I'm sure it's like, I think it's more than 5 years. That's my guess. But yeah, somewhere
yeah.
around there. Mm,
Well, they've gone through, like, a bunch of governesses in the meantime, so yeah.
right,
Um,
right.
but I love the way it's deployed there. It's just it earned its place, I think, for me as the title track of this movie, and it represents all those themes that I was saying that this feels like the story means means to me, like, what it's trying to get across.
You listen, that song is good when after you sit through this movie, which is 3 hours long, and you go, let's watch it again.
Right,
Like
yes.
I was like
Run it back.
when the final credits rolled, I was like, run that back. I mean, I need to start all over, and I need to hear her say the hills are alive with the sound of music all over again. Like it is phenomenal. I struggle between this and Singing in the Rain as to my number one favorite musical of all time.
Yeah. No, and
And
those are
this
2 good
this
choices.
might edge it. It depends. Yeah, it depends on the day, but this is definitely up there.
Well, Julie Andrews already, like I said, like just has such warmth, such a technically perfect singing voice, but then also like there's so much emotion behind it. Like, especially as this character, obviously your mileage may vary on Mary Poppins, but as Maria, you're just like, oh, like I just want her to give me a hug and tell me everything's gonna be all right. Like, she's got that sort of energy, that motherly energy that I think really obviously in the mid 60s lent itself to her playing guardians of small children.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you want to talk about just two characters I absolutely admire is Maria and Captain Von Trapp. Is just
Yeah.
like that's why like I think something good hits so hard is because it's like it's not just two people falling in love, it's two people you really like falling in love. Like
Right.
it's two people who you like admire so much falling in love and you're like, "Yes." Like, oh, like
They
do
found
that.
each
Fall
other.
in love. Yes. It feels so satisfying. It's what every romantic comedy has been trying to achieve since. It's like two
100%.
people you absolutely just root for and admire so much falling in love, and it's like us. It's such a feel good moment,
Yeah.
and just the fact that the movie is about so much more is it's astonishing how good this thing is, and it's
Yeah.
amazing how hard it has been for anyone to find to match it since. Like
Yeah. No,
so.
it's true. Um, I normally, well, first of all, is there anything about the Sound of Music we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure we mentioned before we start wrapping up?
Oh my. I'm sure there is. I do want to mention another one of the scenes that really just again raised my admiration level for Captain Von Trapp is when Ralph comes to the house and he's decked out in the regalia of the
Mhm.
Nazis, and he's trying to talk to the captain, and he just ends up just saying "How Hitler," and you see the captain like unfazed, and he's like he literally wants to kill him right there. Like
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
felt I felt for him there. I was like, man, like those are just it's certain moments in like with that character where I'm like, oh, that's the man I want to be one day.
Yeah,
I'm still
we can
working
yeah, exactly. We can all hope for that one day.
on
So normally I end these by asking guests to sort of sell the movie for their sell listeners on the movie. I feel like you just kind of did that. If people
it.
have seen this or are already going to revisit it, are there any other recommendations of musicals that you'd sort of be like, well, next on your watch list, X, Y, and Z? I guess Singing in the Rain would be a good one.
Singing yeah, Singing in the Rain is definitely one that has to join the ranks. A lot of people love The Wizard of Oz. I'm a much, much bigger fan of The Wiz. I think that's
Mm,
a better version of that story. So I would recommend you going that route. And just for like a completely, you know,
yeah.
out there uh suggestion, check out Dreamgirls. Dreamgirls is
Oh, I love
fantastic.
Dreamgirls. Yeah.
Yeah, the original musical I think is fantastic, and just sort of in that same vein, just of unique stories about people whom you admire and what love can do, and just to keep
Yeah.
your spirits up. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
those are the stories I would recommend. And great musicals, man, just great music.
There's so many great ones. And like I said, like I'm really kind of permeated by this genre at the moment,
Right.
obviously. And so I'm like, oh, what other ones have I had not seen? I need to just go like check it out. I've seen The Wiz a million years ago, and I need to go back and revisit it. Like it's been one that I need to go back and revisit. And I haven't even really like publicly sort of thrown this out there yet, but I am
Mhm.
quietly planning a curated Oz mega series for franchise detours that
Oh,
will include The Wiz. So we
oh,
might have
yes.
to bring you back for that, I think,
I'm
later
all
this
down
year.
for that.
Well, it's just like Oz is in the air with the whole Wicked of it all. So,
Yes.
we well, by the time this episode airs, we will have already covered the first Wicked. I'm gonna obviously circle back for Wicked for Good. And
Mhm.
there's so many versions of that IP that it's just
Yeah.
like that's gonna like I want to
That's
have
that's a
several different
solid series.
conversations. Yeah, so we might have to circle back when that time comes. But once again, Phoenix, this has been so much fun. Thank you for coming on to discuss the sound of music. Can you tell people where they can find you on social media?
Oh yeah, so I'm still unfortunately on Twitter. You guys can find me at IMHO Reviews One. That's the number one. I have officially opened a Blue Sky account, so I'm on there as well under IMHO Film. I think I double check. Maybe same name. Let's go same name. Uh, Yeah, I also speaking of musicals, I am also doing a musical podcast as well.
Oh, nice.
With, yeah, with my friend Lazuli, we are going through musicals A through Z. Check us out. The show's called Curtain to Curtain. So we're in the middle of the I's. No, sorry, the J's, I think, right now. So we're making our way through. So check us out wherever you get your podcasts. I think we're actually on YouTube. So yeah, just check us out on YouTube at Curtain to Curtain. Yeah, and that's where you guys can find me.
Awesome. No, I didn't know you had that going on. I'm gonna have to go and check that out too, because
Oh yeah,
like I
hell yeah.
said, there's a lot for me to still learn in this genre. Yeah, no, that's so cool. Meanwhile, everybody can find more episodes like this wherever you get your podcast and on crookedtable.com. So show your support on Patreon at patreon.com/crookedtable. Or if you want to keep up with us on social media, that'll be at Crooked Table on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. With everything happening with Meta, we'll see how long how long until that changes. We'll be back next episode with another classic movie musical. But for now, that's a wrap on another Crooked Table production. Keep watching, everybody.